Okay, now I think I'm really live. My goodness, this is this is so interesting. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I recorded something for like 45 minutes. I was so on point with everything, but I think I didn't record. So I don't know. You might find duplicate videos. But I think this one is good because now I see the chat comments. I don't know who's going to join. Okay, how rude of me. Paul, I was supposed to join at 6:30. I actually recorded something and I thought I was live, but I wasn't. So I will do everything over again. And in fact, it fits into today's topic. So welcome to Wezesha Wednesday. My name is Ichi. What is Wezesha? It's a platform that provides access to information, resources, opportunity, and support so you can feel empowered. How do we do it? Through shared experiences. I've done some panel discussions in the past, but over the last 3 weeks, this being the fourth week, I created this thing called Wezesha Wednesday. Simply put, Wezesha's mission is to empower through shared experiences, but with Wezesha Wednesday, my plan is to just engage with you in a Facebook Live fashion. Why Wednesday? Everyone's really stoked on Sundays. People get inspired at church. On Mondays, people are motivated. By the time you get to Wednesday, like today, you're just exhausted. You can't see the end in sight, especially when it comes to accomplishing goals. So my sincere hope is through the Wezesha Wednesdays is to get you through that hump so you can accomplish your aspirational goals. Over the past few weeks, we've explored this thing called the insight action gap, which is basically why do we have such aspirational goals and we're so motivated and we have everything, every tool in our toolkit to accomplish these goals, but when it comes to action, there's a gap. And so over the past 3 weeks, we've been sort of strengthening that muscle of action. And in doing so, just trying to figure out what are those things that along the way will make us fumble, F-U-M-B-L-E, because fumbling is a part of accomplishing a goal. So the F we started with week 1 was facing our fear. Week 2 was getting unstuck, that's the U. Week 3 was managing mindset, which is the M. And today we're talking about probably my favorite one. I've often been asked by mentees, by mentors, by peers, by leaders, by my team, by friends, and even by some of your kids. They've asked me, hey, what is the one piece of advice you would give someone when it comes to accomplishing the aspirational goals, when it comes to career advancement, personal, professional growth, etc.? And, I honestly, my answer over the last several years has been be bold. Be bold. So I'm going to be supporting why I think being bold is the advice I would give to everyone, right? So interestingly, academic literature supports the idea of being bold. Here's what sort of summary of academic literature says, right? Being bold is necessary for career advancement. Research suggests that individuals who take bold career moves such as pursuing challenging projects or advocating for their ideas, are more likely to be noticed and rewarded by their employers. Being bold equals career advancement. Skill development. Taking on bold challenges can push individuals outside of their comfort zones, leading to the development of new skills. So sometimes we're very comfortable in the work that we do and we don't make those bold moves, but by making those bold moves, resulting from those bold moves will be skill development. So bold moves, correlation, skill development. This one's really good. Bold moves. Research has shown that employees who feel empowered to take risks and make bold decisions are more likely to be satisfied with their jobs. So are you dissatisfied with your job? Are you sort of like tired of the day-to-day mundane things that you're doing, the status quo? Being bold, and I'll talk about the nuances of being bold because we have to be very intentional and we have to be systematic when we think about being bold. But being bold has been shown in the situations where you feel empowered or there's felt empowerment to lead to job satisfaction. Being bold allows you to create networking opportunities. Taking bold career moves can lead to increased visibility and network opportunities. Again, in the context of work, but even in some of the things that you do as a business owner or in your personal growth and development, being bold and sometimes even talking when you're meeting new people, being the one to make that bold first move will open up networking opportunities for you. Being bold can be a catalyst for personal growth and development. A lot of us want personal growth and development, seek personal growth and development as a prereq for accomplishing our aspirational goals. Being bold correlated to personal growth. So that's what academia says about being bold, and that's why I feel so strongly about being bold. But what does being bold really mean? But actually, before I do that, before I define what being bold really means, let me give you some examples of bold moves that, I've made, people I've spoken to made, what the literature says about being bold, and some of the examples, right? Pursuing a promotion or a new job opportunity, that takes being bold. If there's a promotion opportunity and you take the proactive step of going for it, that's being bold. If there's a new job opportunity, something opens up, that's being bold. Taking on a challenging project or assignment, something that you're not quite clear about, something that, as Susan Seda once said, something for which you don't even know that you qualify, but you make that bold move to take on that project, that assignment, that role, that job that you don't even qualify for, that's being bold. Advocating for a new idea or initiative, something that you feel really, really strongly about, either as a matter of principle, it's just the right thing to do, you feel really purposeful about, that's being bold. Starting your own business or venture, now that I know a lot about, right? Don't get me started on that. A lot of you who I've spoken to want to make transition from corporate career to self-employment. And sometimes it means starting your own business or, buying a business or starting a new venture. Being bold, that's an example of being bold. And I'll talk later about the difference between being bold and week one when we talked about facing fear. Some people entirely change their career. Changing careers entirely is a bold move. Some of you are doing this. When we started Wezesha, I think in January, we had the corporate versus self-employed series. And I remember, talking to Jane Mukami. A lot of you know her. She was in tech. And then she's now transitioned to Fit Kenya Girl and to coaching about online business is something completely different from tech. If you remember Monga, my sister Monga, shout out to Stock Sisterhood, was in healthcare and she transitioned to stock, like something completely different than what she does or what she did. Those are bold moves. So I hope that I was trying to make the correlation between being bold and sort of the outcomes that we all are looking for, career advancement, job satisfaction, personal growth, etc. And then also giving you examples of what being bold is in terms of pragmatic things that you can start doing tomorrow. But before I say that, how about I define what being bold is? And as you all know, I always sort of try and put academia definition and then a pragmatic one, right? Or a practical one. So in academia, boldness means venturing into uncharted territories of research, questioning established paradigms and proposing, is this novel or novel? Kenyans were always tongue-tied. Novel theories. Boldness means venturing into uncharted territories of research, questioning established paradigms, and proposing novel theories or methodologies, even if they challenge conventional wisdom. The earth is flat. Oh no, the earth's round. Ooh, we're going to stone you. You're bad. You don't know what you're talking about. Bold move. In academic research, there's always this thing called, what is it called? In hypothesis, the null, and what is the other one called? Oh my goodness, I'm live. I can't even. The null and the alternative, right? So what is it that conventional wisdom says, or what conventional theories say must be true? Okay. And then as a researcher, you have to come in and say, do you support that hypothesis or do you not support that hypothesis? You making a bold move to say conventional wisdom says this, academia says this, but I'm going to prove to you that that is not right, the alternative hypothesis. That is being bold. In practice, this is what it means. It involves taking calculated risks, implementing innovative solutions, embracing change even when faced with uncertainty or opposition. I'm going to repeat that again. It involves taking calculated risks, implementing innovative solutions, embracing change even when faced with uncertainty or opposition. So what are the key things here? The key things here are being bold is you, and this is where the difference between being bold and sort of like facing fear. This is where I think in my mind, this is why I draw the distinction. Facing fear is something, or going through fear to ensure that you're able to proceed with pursuing your goals. Facing fear is something reactive. A situation comes up, you fight, you fly, you flee, you freeze, right? Those are the reactions, the physical reactions that you get, and you have to figure out how to go through those. And in week 1, we talked about 2 things. We talked about exposure therapy and we talked about learning. By doing those things, you are able to face and go through fear. When I think about being bold, I don't think about something reactive, because perhaps going through fear is going to be one of the stages of you being bold. But being bold is about being proactive, raising your hand and saying, I want to do this, I can do this, I will do this. And I'll give you some tools over here that help. But it's really proactive. And when I think about the sort of like the fumble, I've told you, going from aspiration to accomplishment, it's not a straight line. Somewhere along the line, you're going to fumble, right? And that's where fear comes in, getting unstuck, managing your mindset, and now we're in B, being bold. So one of my faves, she's like in my top 10. I think for some of you, she's in your top 3. I know for like Joanne Wangi, she's in your like top 1, Brené Brown. In the book Dare to Lead, she talks about vulnerability and courage in leadership being bold. So she's saying one of the things about being bold is being comfortable with vulnerability and having courage in leadership. And in fact, she says, you see, sometimes you have to say, I don't know, as a necessary practice of being bold. Sometimes you have to say, I don't know, as a necessary practice of being bold. What does that mean? And in the context of vulnerability, when she talks about vulnerability, and this is something us Kenyans, we are not good at. Kenyans, we're machinos. We know everything, right? And we are very shy about putting our hand up and saying, I don't know. Maybe it's the way we were raised. We were punished if we didn't know things. If you didn't know the times table, you're a chapwad. For whatever reason, it's very difficult for us to raise up our hands and say, I don't know. But one of the prerequisites of being bold is actually being vulnerable enough to say, I don't know. I remember it took me a long time, but at some point in time in my academic career, I figured out, I'll be raising my hand in class. One, raising my hand in class was to better understand something that I didn't know, right? So I felt courageous enough to do that. I was bold enough to raise my hand. Sometimes I would raise my hand, even though I know the answer, because by raising my hand, I figured by raising my hand, it gives a signal to the instructor that I'm listening. It gives a signal to the instructor. It's sort of a motivating factor for the instructor to actually impart more knowledge to me. And then thirdly, I always knew there's someone in class who's not raising their hand because they're scared and they're not being bold. And so I had a habit of doing that in school. At work, I've inherited the same habit over several years. I raise my hand when I have a question. When I don't understand a concept, I raise my hand. I'm bold enough to express vulnerability and say, I do not understand what you mean. Could you please restate what you meant by that? And sometimes even when, secret here, even when I know, I'll raise my hand, especially if there's many people, I'll raise my hand and ask a question, even if I know the answer. Part of it is strategic, right? So that people know, hey, who's this guy? He asked a really interesting question, even though I know the answer. And then part of it is, again, to give the person who is instructing or who's, leading the discussion, to give them a signal that I'm listening. And by doing so, they will actually open up and impart more knowledge. And then thirdly, obviously, there's someone out there who is scared of asking a question. By raising my hand and being bold, they might be bold enough to ask their questions too. So that's what she says, Brene Brown. And she outlines several themes that encourage boldness in both personal and professional life. One, embrace vulnerability. We talked about that. Vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is not weakness. Whew! But rather the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. Vulnerability is not weakness, but rather the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. To be bold in your career, you must be willing to show up authentically, even when uncomfortable or risky. This means taking ownership of your mistakes, asking for help, and sharing your ideas even if you're not 100% certain. Embracing vulnerability. 2, choosing courage over comfort. Choosing courage. We talked about this last week in Managing Mindset. Choose courage over comfort by facing fears, speaking up against injustice, pursuing opportunities that may seem daunting. The willingness to take risks can lead to significant growth and success. Bold career moves often require stepping outside of your comfort zone. Choose courage over comfort. Bold equal choosing courage over comfort. Now, I want to be careful with this because I'm sure you're asking, okay, Chi, okay, I get it. You're saying be bold, but then you're telling me to embrace vulnerability. You're telling me to choose courage over comfort. The one thing that I'm going to talk about later is even as you do that, you have to do it in a calculated fashion. And I'll give you some examples of that. You also want to ensure that even as you are advocating for your ideas and you're raising your hand and you're being bold and you're pushing for the thing that you know that's right, it's important for you to also be an active listener of the feedback you're getting, right? You need to be able to sort of filter the signal from the noise, because you'll get a lot of feedback where people are saying, why are you trying that? What does that mean? Why are you doing that? It's important to allow yourself the opportunity to receive feedback, to receive communication, actively listen. So even as you make your bold move, you're doing it in a calculated manner. The other thing that she says is lead with wholeheartedness. Bold leadership involves leading with authenticity, passion, and purpose. And this is where being bold can be one of the things that may drive you to be bold, that certainly has driven me to be bold, is when it's a matter of principle, when it's something I feel very strongly about, when it's something that is just and is about justice, is about integrity, something that is so important that me not being bold means that there could be a compounded effect on other people like me. I mean, we think about where we make bold moves when it comes to our family, when it comes to people that we love, when it comes to things that we deem important in our work and our career, right? So as you're doing that, try and figure out what are these things that mean so much to you that you're willing to take that calculated risk and raise your hand to move them forward. And sometimes with career, that's just it. This career progression is important to you, so you're going to raise your hand and say, I'm going to take that project even though I don't know what it's about. I'm going to buy that business because I strongly believe that I want to leave a legacy for my family. That's how strongly I feel about it, so I'm going to raise my hand and be bold. This is, okay, if you haven't heard anything, if my voice has just been draining you and you're like, hey, it's supposed to be Wezesha Wednesday, but you're bringing me down, please listen to the next words that I say. Another sort of construct of being bold is the power of imperfect action. Perfectionism can be a major obstacle to boldness. Brown encourages people to embrace the idea of imperfect action, recognizing that it's better to try and fail than to never try at all. It's better to try and fail than to never try at all. This mindset allows for experimentation, learning from mistakes, and ultimately taking bolder risks. Perfectionism can be a major obstacle to boldness. Do we have to know every single piece of information before we make that bold move? Question mark, question mark. Brave or bold mindset allows for experimentation, learning from mistakes, and ultimately taking bolder risks. So the bottom line here, folks, is we talked about the inside action gap, and we talked about some of the reason why action fails is because we haven't exercised that muscle. But why do you think we haven't exercised that muscle? Because every time we're waiting for it to be perfectly molded for us before we take action. What Brené Brown is suggesting, and I wholeheartedly agree, is take that move. Better to try and fail than to never try at all. However, I will say, make sure it's a calculated, bold risk move that you're taking, right? If it's a life or death situation, obviously we have to be smart about it. But let me tell you something. One of my favorite books by Klein, what was it called? Streetlights and Shadows. Streetlights and Shadows, one of my favorite books of all time. He talked about the emergency room, right? Trauma room, emergency room, people are coming. So someone comes with a huge traumatic injury or whatever, and the doctor, the emergency room doctor, at that point in time has to make a decision with very limited information. He can't ask someone who's been shot or someone who's collapsed or someone who is on the verge of dying, hey, what's your family history? Do you have diabetes in your history? Do you have heart condition? He does not have the time to get that perfect information in order to make a decision. So, excuse me. So what does the doctor do? What she does is she takes just the information that's needed to make a decision to get them through the trauma. And then after, we can go in and perfect it, right? That's the same exact thing I'm suggesting to you all. Sometimes making a bold move doesn't as a prerequisite to it for you to have perfect information to make that move. Wow. I have to repeat it one more time. Recognize that it's better to try and fail than to never try at all. Okay, so Brené Brown, my top 10. I'm going to give you this guy, my top 5. Adam Grant talks about challenging conformity. He has a book called Originals, right? So Grant says, true innovation and progress stem from original thinking and challenging the status quo. So folks, when I talk about being bold, it's about challenging the status quo. It's about proactively taking that step either against the system or against what you know to be true. If you're a person who's conservative by nature, for whom being bold is something totally out of your comfort zone, I got you. I'm not saying that overnight you have to change. What I'm saying is, and I really strongly believe this, what I'm saying is it's necessary to be bold. Now, what are the things that are going to make you bold? Maybe it's the people that you're around. Maybe it's the community you're around. Maybe it's your friends. Maybe it's telling them the idea you have. I'm a huge believer in reading, in learning. I'm a huge believer in coaching. Sometimes it's a coach that you need, someone who's not going to judge you, but who will drive you to make those bold moves. A career coach, a personal coach, a mentor, a sponsor, someone who's going to sit down and say, look, Have you seen anything that you'd like to do? Yes. What is stopping you from doing it? Fear. Okay, go talk to Ichi Wezesha Wednesday and he'll tell you about fear. Okay, what's stopping you from doing it? I'm stuck. I can't figure things out. Go talk to Ichi. He'll help you with getting unstuck. Got it. Okay. I was born like this. I can't do it. Okay, let's talk about managing mindset. All right, those are reactive things. But now you need to make this bold move. Sometimes you need someone who's going to guide you through and maybe help you make those calculated decisions in making those bold moves. So even though it may feel like it doesn't come naturally to you, because maybe it comes more naturally to others and you see it in others, but you don't see it in yourself. Find someone who can encourage you to make those bold moves. Okay, anyway, so what does Adam Grant say? True innovation and progress stem from original thinking and challenging the status quo. To be bold in your career, you must be willing to embrace your unique ideas and perspective, even though they go against the grain. Okay, so I'm going to tell you something. One of the boldest moves I made, like boldest move, and I'm not saying like those bold Utoi moves when, like we're kids, we were throwing ourselves in the river and walking across the riverside or whatever, those were, I'm not talking about those Utoi boldness. And by the way, I'm not also talking about, which I think was very bold for a lot of us, coming across the ocean from freaking East Africa to like the States. Those were bold moves. Like, think about the boldness that the youth have, right? That's why I admire them. But I'm talking beyond that. In my more conservative life where I have so much to lose, one of the boldest moves I made resulted in a really big promotion for me at work, right? But the reason I made that bold move was because I felt strongly about something. I felt strongly enough that I needed to mobilize people around it and get something done that was a fundamental change, a really huge change, a really huge fundamental change. But I remember, as strong as I felt about it and as bold as I felt that I could do it, I also wanted to make sure that it wasn't a career ender for me, right? And so I went to someone and said, hey, I feel so strongly about this. I think I've crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's, but man, if I make this move, I don't know what could happen. And I remember him telling me, he said, look, I see how strongly you feel about it. I think in stating what it is that you need done, the change that you need to also talk about the fact that you think this could be something that could end your career. Basically, be vulnerable with the fact that even as you're pushing for this thing, you understand that it could be seen in a different way, and that could be a career ender for you. So go in saying what it is that you want, be bold, but at the same time, make sure that you also sort of cover yourself, right? And I did that. It took me a while to do that, but again, it's probably had the biggest impact in my career. And because of that, now I'm able to make more bolder moves because if I was able to do that, these are the things I can do as well. And I think that's what you'll hear with Adam Grant, right? What Adam Grant says is, you need to be able to balance risk and reward. He advocates for a calculated approach to boldness, where you carefully assess potential downsides and create contingency plans. This guy must have been reading my mind. I think me and Adam, we're like this. Build coalitions of support. Grant emphasizes the importance of building a network of allies who share your vision and values. By surrounding yourself with supporting individuals, you create a safety net for experimentation and risk-taking. Didn't I just talk about that? Didn't I just say that you have to find a community? There's those people who might not believe in you. There's those people who might push you to the extreme and say, oh, why are you scared? Why aren't you making these moves? You have to find those people who understand you for who you are and your values, and can gently guide you through to meeting your aspirational goals. And again, that's maybe where coaching comes in, where you can find someone who can do that for you. Champion your ideas with conviction. This guy must have been reading my mind. I was so convinced about the truth of what I was trying to do, you could not stop me from doing it. You have to have conviction. When you raise your hand in boldness, you have to have conviction about this. To make a real impact, you must be willing to speak up, to challenge conventional wisdom, and to persuade others of the value of your unique perspective. A lot of you are making bold moves, right? Because this is something that's important to you. This is something that you feel purpose in. This is something that you would, sometimes it's even a matter of principle or a matter of a value system. Be vocal about it. Do it with conviction. Be bold. Sometimes it requires courage, conviction, and the ability to articulate your ideas effectively. You know what? Sometimes you can be bold, but you just don't know how to say it. And again, that's where you find people. I'm not saying people say surround yourself with like-minded people. I disagree. I do not agree. Look, why? There's a difference between compatibility and complementarity. Okay, I've shrugged there. There's a difference between compatibility and complementarity, right? Someone who's compatible with you is someone who is minded like you, and you need people like that, because in some ways they reinforce your values, they reinforce your principles, they make you feel like what you're doing is the right thing because they're in so much alignment with you. That's great, but to progress, you have to find people who complement you, people who make up for the weaknesses that you have, people who push you when you don't need to, when you're feeling like you can't be pushed anymore, right? That's where, again, coaches come in, or even friends or partners, people who complement what you have. So I do agree that you should have like-minded. I shouldn't have said that I don't disagree. I agree that you should have like-minded people around you, but I also say you should have other people that don't think like you, but who can complement what it is that you do. And those people can then help you articulate your ideas effectively. So if you want to start a business, you want to be convincing. If you're a shy person, but you don't know how to start a business, find a coach who is not shy, who can help you with your business, right? Embrace failure as a stepping stone. Whew! Embrace failure as a stepping stone. Grant emphasizes that failure is not the end of the road, but rather a valuable learning experience. Kai. So if I fail, it's not the end, it's something that allows me to learn. Be bold, folks. Be bold. The being fumble. This is where we're going from being reactive to proactive. Be bold. So, in summary, right? For yourself, embrace vulnerability, right? As you think about yourself and what you need to do in order to make those bold moves. Embrace vulnerability. Choose courage over comfort. Cultivate trust and connection. Find people you can connect with. Lead with wholeheartedness. This deep desire that you have to do good, lead with it. Harness the power of imperfect action. Do not wait to be perfect. Do not wait for it to be perfect before you try it. I can give so many examples about this. I think over the years, I've developed it almost to a fault. I started, and once the train leaves the station, I'm on it. I mean, what am I going to do? I've made a commitment to Wezesha Wednesday, so I was supposed to start at 6:30. Something happened, whatever. Now it's 8 p.m. because the train left the station, y'all. I need to give you Wezesha Wednesday, right? But how do you do it? Cultivate originality. embrace risk, build support networks, advocate for your ideas with passion and conviction. This last point, advocate for your ideas with passion and conviction. Let me tell you, when we did the Wezesha corporate versus self-employment, Leo Fire was the first person. Shout out to Leo Fire above zero. And remember how he talked with conviction about, like, he was doing this at work, but he knew he could do it for himself to serve others. Like, he had so much conviction that he said, you know what, I'm going to start my own business. Why am I working for a company doing the same thing that I could be doing serving others? Leo Fire above zero. Then Jane Mukami, right? The greatest of all time. Jane Mukami talked about when her mom said you have to go to graduate school. But she was so convinced about Fit Kenya Girl and starting her own business that she went against her mom. And if I remember, she said she didn't talk to her mom for a long time. That is advocating for your ideas with passion and conviction. Remember when Monga joined us? I mean, she was sent here to do nursing, to do medicine, to be in healthcare, and she did. She tried her best. Then at a point, she was like, you know what? I feel so convinced about self-employment. I've been doing this stock stuff. I'm so happy with this stock stuff. You know what? I'm going to leave this job, the comfort of a job, a 9 to 5, and I'm going to launch Stock Sisterhood. Shout out to Monga. Gina Darrow, Jean, my mentor. She doesn't even know she's my mentor, but she is. Gina Darrow, and carrying the continent of Africa in I Am Africa. I mean, think about all the things that she does with I Am Africa, Atlanta, I Am Africa, Kenya, all the vision boarding, everything that she does to get us off that, whatever, the hamster wheel or whatever it's called, right? But she has so much conviction in what she does that she's able to push it out and push that energy to us. Leo, Jean, Monga, Jane. I mean, advocate for your ideas with passion and conviction. And I know there's a lot of others out there that I haven't mentioned that I've spoken to, I've engaged with. And I admire all of you who are able to advocate for your ideas with passion and conviction. Raise your hand, make those bold moves, and start doing things for yourself. Of course, my wife being one of them. She left her cushy job, corporate tax accounting, to pursue something that she loves. BBI Design Solutions. Shout out to you, Wawa. So I'll summarize it by saying this, right? Remember, as you make bold moves, right, they may fail. They may fail. But failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of success. I wish I came up with that. This is Ariana Huffington who said this. I wish I came up with that, but it is so like it. I'll say it again. Let me say my part first. As you make bold moves, they may fail, comma. That's me saying it. Ariana says, failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of success. Yo. Happy Wezesha Wednesday. I hope this time this one worked. Obviously no one joined, but I hope someone watches it. Give me your comments. I put a little survey at the bottom because I'm just trying to gather information on some of the things that you are trying to accomplish and what's stopping you from accomplishing them. So hopefully the B in fumble was beneficial for you. This week, be bold. Raise your hand and make those moves that you've been stalling on, not because of fear, just because you didn't proactively raise your hand. Cheers.